guest today is Dr. Awel Qasim Alo. He's a lecturer at Kiel University in UK, and also international lawyer and a specialist in human rights and the Horn of Africa and Ethiopia. Welcome, Doctor. Let's begin from your birthplace. Where were you born?
Born in Bali zone, a town called Gasara. I'm actually born in a village called Wate, which is just outside the town of Gasara.
Between Dumbel and Gasara?
It is, but it is very close to Gasara. Yeah. So it's about 15-20 minutes walking distance. I think probably by now it has already merged with the city. So that's where I was born. I studied in different places in Bali. I studied in Gasara, in Wote, in Dembel, Dodola, Goba. So I've been traveling around growing up. Studied in different places in that zone. So Jolle Bali.
Jolle Bali, children of Bali, actually the fighters who struggled for the freedom of their people.
Can I just say on that point, because it has a very distinctive kind of meaning, right? This is a region where I think the Oromo struggle began, and the vernacular of Jolle Bali speaks to the idea that there is a particular brand of Oromo generation that's so resistant, so defiant, and presented a particular kind of question. So at the center, there is a way in which people from that part of the country were seen during the imperial regime and also in the Derg regime. So proud to be part of that history.
What about university?
I studied high school in Goba, and I went to Addis Ababa University. I studied law. I got my undergraduate degree in law in 2006, and then I did a master's degree, again in law and international human rights. I got that degree from University of Notre Dame in the US. And then I came back here, I taught for a year, and then got a PhD scholarship. And I went to University of Glasgow in the UK, and that's where I did my PhD.
And then you started working at Kiel University, or before that somewhere?
After I finished my PhD, actually a little bit before finishing the PhD, I started working at the London School of Economics in London. I was in the sociology department, so it's called the London School of Economics, but it's a social science school.
You worked at Kiel University, or?
Worked at the London School of Economics for 3 years, from 2013 to 2016, and then moved to Kiel University in 2013 in September.
Well, we've been given analysis to different issues, including the Sudan, Eritrea, and many other, of course, the entire Horn of Africa. And let's talk about the situation in Sudan today. What's your impression?
Sudan is a neighboring country to us. My interest in Sudan is not simply scholarly or intellectual. I'm also politically interested in what happens in Sudan. We have so much in common. Culturally, I think there is a certain level of proximity. We share a very large border, especially given the situation in Amhara region, for example, today, and the general fragility broadly within the Ethiopian state. What happens in Sudan affects us, not just in terms of, for example, the flow of refugees from Sudan into Ethiopia, but also in terms of the flow of arms as well. Sudan is also interesting from an economic point of view, because Ethiopia currently imports about 20% of its oil from Sudan. Ethiopia is building Africa's largest dam, about 10 kilometers from the Sudanese border. Sudan naturally becomes a very important country politically for us. But my interest and my intervention is really political, while obviously the way in which I look at things is also scholarly and academic.
And the same is true to the issues of Eritrea and Ethiopia, the rapprochement of Ethiopia and Eritrea. What you said was amazing, because you absolutely underlined that the coming together of these nations would pacify the environment, even which is better for the good situation of the Horn of Africa, said. Am I right?
No, absolutely. I actually wrote an opinion piece for Al Jazeera just after Abiy Ahmed became a prime minister, following his speech, where I said that Eritrea as a country has the weight of international law on its side, and it is important that Ethiopia moves forward and accept the Algiers Agreement unconditionally. And luckily, The Ethiopian government accepted it. Abiy reached out. The Eritrean government responded. And we now have a situation that is significantly better than the situation we had before. I think currently there are a few issues. I think the borders are closed, but that has really nothing to do with the Ethiopian side. I think it has more to do with the complex situation on the other side of the border. But what we have today is significantly better than the situation that existed in the past. And I think it had created some kind of momentum for regional peace, regional integration. I think moving forward, working on the regional dimension of peace and security through economic integration needs to be a priority for Ethiopian government as the biggest country in the Horn of Africa and also as a most strategically significant nation in this part of the world.
Your comment on the transition in Ethiopia, this is the transition period we are in. What's your view?
I have really never expected that Ethiopia would suddenly become this thriving, vibrant democracy, right? That's not how society changes. Social change is a very complex process. Society is stubborn, institutions are very stubborn, bureaucracies resist change. So that I know from reading social science, and the empirical evidence from transitional democracies clearly shows that. So I never expected that would suddenly become a democratic state, mainly because of the complexity in the country, the nature of questions that different segments of the society in this country have been asking. These are questions that you cannot address overnight. They take a very long time. Some of these questions require constitutional amendment or constitutional change. Changing the constitution requires consensus within the country, not just the interests of one particular group. So that complexity and the central role the complexities of these questions hold in terms of making the transition work gives me some pause, right? But clearly where we are today, the level of opening that we have is something that I value. I think a lot of us seem to forget what we have been through and what we went through. Being able to say what I want to say without watching my back. This is huge, and I don't think most people appreciate that. So I think while it is important to do everything we can to get this transition over the line, that we have to be very methodical and also progressive. I don't think you could change everything in one go, while at the same time keeping the Ethiopian state together. But I think the aspiration, the focus has to be about getting the country over the line to a democratic system. And that takes a very long time. And it requires, I think, the work of everybody, not just the state, but also non-state actors and society generally.
In relation to this situation in Ethiopia, you're concerned, you and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, he says መደመር or synergy, you say solidarity. Just what do you mean by that?
I didn't say መደመር is the same as solidarity, but I'm interested in these twin ideas of መደመር and solidarity. Solidarity has been around. It's a slightly rich concept. It has a form, it has content as well, a normative content. So መደመር is a new concept. We have not really seen a detailed analysis and elucidation of the concept to call it a philosophy yet. In my view, it's not a philosophy yet. It's not an ideology yet. Ideology is a worldview. It is something that governs and regulates what you think about certain things without you knowing about it. And it takes time. Marxism did not become an ideology overnight. Liberalism did not become an ideology overnight. It's through a series of debates and contestations, arguments, through institutionalization, through praxis, that it became an ideology and it acquired the kind of political form that it has today. And መደመር takes time. It requires time in order for it to become an ideology. Because remember, when an idea is taken up by a head of a government in a particular country, everything that he says, regardless of what it does for a society, will be contested by those who have the political interest. And that's absolutely fine. In a democracy, you have to have that. You have to have opposition. But this idea has to emerge not just by people clapping for it, but also by people opposing it. It's when it becomes a governing ideology through contestations, through debates, through acceptance, that it can become an ideology. Okay? So it's going to take a very long time for it to become something that resembles an ideology. I think it's important for the Prime Minister to clarify and refine what it means at the political level, economically, socially. It's important that through appropriate channels that is institutionalized, through policies embedded into institutions, all those things need to be done in order for it to kind of generate and produce the effect that we want it to produce. But he calls it synergy, but it is more than synergy. And I also didn't necessarily describe it as solidarity, but I'm interested in solidarity as well as kind of a twin idea that could give us some, I think, way of thinking about Madamar itself.
The celebration of Eritrea in Finfinne City after 150 years is something amazing. But I need your comment. What's your comment on that?
We are able to demonstrate the remarkable, deep significance and the beauty of the Eritrea and that tradition, and all the meanings that are associated with it here in the capital is, I think, a remarkable progress, not just for the Oromo public, but also for the entire Ethiopian people. It's a beautiful culture. It has a deep meaning. It is very significant. It is something that we consider as one of the most important expressions of who we are. If the Ethiopian state is really to be at peace with the Oromo identity and with the Oromo public, it is important that it embraces one of those key cultural values that define us as people. So I think this is great for the Oromo people, great for the Ethiopian public as well.
Are you married?
I am married. I have a beautiful daughter. Her name is Anaa, and she's the world to me. She's my priority in everything that I do. Yeah.
Is there something you may add on what I've raised?
There's a lot that can be said, because there are a lot of problems, there are a lot of issues. What I would say is that I think it's really important for us to be responsible in everything that we do. Actions have consequences. When we do certain things, it's possible that what we do might have value in terms of building our political profile, or in terms of advancing our economic interest, or some other type of interest, or simply some kind of egotistical interest. But I think it is important that we act with caution, with care, to make sure that this transition that we have works for us. In my view, there are structural advantages that the Oromos have today. By acting responsibly, I fear that we might blow it up. So while it is important for our people, I think, to remain active and alert and engaged, it's also important to be responsible in terms of how we act. It's important that we read each other. We might have differences on a range of things, and I could have different views from you on, I don't know, a number of issues. But insofar as broader Oromo interest is concerned, it's important that you and I see eye to eye. If we don't do that, if our job is to basically undermine each other and work against one another, I think we might put our own advantage at risk, but also put the country at risk.
Thanks for watching. Have a good time. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for your time, Doc.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you.